Yeah, walaikum salam Faiza ji and good evening.
Good evening, all the participants. I can see Dr. Suniti
यस
here.
मैम। मैम
Thank you for
नमस्ते।
joining.
मैम आप
Dr.
कैसी हैं?
Sarita Rani जी नमस्ते नमस्ते, बिल्कुल ठीक है हम। आप सब ठीक हैं?
बिल्कुल मैम, आपका आशीर्वाद है।
Right. So see, we have to learn from our resource person. She joined much before everybody else did. So Suniti ma'am, I would request
मैम
that as we have discussed yesterday, let us have a 15 minutes short ceremonial valedictory. उसके
जी जी
बाद आपका valedictory address, and Dr. Shakila Shamsu is our resource person also for this session.
यस मैम। मैम इस शॉर्ट टर्म कोर्स में मैं आप सभी का स्वागत करती हूँ। मैम आपका स्वागत करना इस कार्यक्रम में हमारे लिए बहुत ही गर्व और सौभाग्य का विषय है कि आपकी सही मार्गदर्शन और नेतृत्व से हमें सही दिशा मिली। बल्कि आपके शॉर्ट टर्म कोर्स से हम सभी शिक्षकों को अपने दायित्वों के प्रति प्रेरणा भी प्राप्त होती है कि किस प्रकार से हमें बच्चों को पढ़ाना है, किस प्रकार से हमें आगे बढ़ना है। समय समय पर होने वाले ये शॉर्ट टर्म प्रोग्राम हमें मैम हमेशा आगे बढ़ने के लिए प्रोत्साहित करते हैं। मैंने पिछले साल से कई सारे शॉर्ट टर्म प्रोग्राम और FIP की हैं, जिसमें 90% अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी से हैं। मैं मैम आपके बारे में एक बात कहना चाहती हूँ। मेरी एक वीडियो मैं रात देख रही थी लास्ट ईयर की, मैंने इंग्लिश ग्रामर की क्लास अटेंड करी थी सैयद फैजली सर की। उसमें सर ने कहा था आप एक वीडियो भेजिए, तो मैंने वीडियो भेजी थी, वो मैं आपको पर्सनली शेयर करूंगी। उस समय मैं आपको जानती भी नहीं थी, तब भी मैंने आपके बारे में जो भी बोला है आप सुनिएगा प्लीज मैम। तो मैम हम शिक्षक तभी सफल हो पाते हैं जबकि हम निरंतर प्रशिक्षण के मार्ग पर आगे रहें, और ये शॉर्ट टर्म कोर्स जो है हमें इसी दिशा में निरंतर आगे बढ़ाता रहता है। हम इस प्रक्रिया से जुड़े हैं जिससे कि हम अपने हमारी जो शिक्षण का उद्देश्य है उसको हम पूरा कर सकें। और मैम इस शॉर्ट टर्म कोर्स में आपका जो योगदान है वो वास्तव में अनुकरणीय है। आपका अनुभव और दृष्टिकोण, ये जो आपने हमें समय समय पर प्रदान किया है, उससे हमारे ये कार्यक्रम बहुत ज्यादा समृद्ध हुआ है। हमारे सभी पार्टिसिपेंट लगातार जुड़े रहे, अगर कुछ काम भी कर रहे हैं लेकिन मेरी लगातार सबसे बात होती रही। सबने कहा कि कार्यक्रम बहुत अच्छा रहा। जितने भी रिसोर्स पर्सन थे वो सभी एक से एक बढ़कर थे। आपके आशीर्वाद से मैम हमारा कार्यक्रम दिन दूनी रात चौगनी तरक्की करी। कार्यक्रम ने जो पहले दिन जो कमियां थी वो मैम आज आते आते आपके आशीर्वाद से हमने वो सारी कमियां दूर कर दी हैं। हमें ये विश्वास है कि मैम आगे भी आपका सहयोग हमें मिलता रहेगा, और विशेषकर मुझे मिलता रहेगा मैम आपका सहयोग और आपका आशीर्वाद मुझे मिलता रहेगा। आप सभी को मेरी तरफ से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आज मैम हमारी प्रिंसिपल मैम दरअसल जुड़ नहीं पाई, BC की एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट मीटिंग थी, इसलिए वो जुड़ नहीं पाई। मैम आपने जो हमें स्नेहिल मार्गदर्शन दिया, सूझबूझ दी, और नेतृत्व से जो आपने शॉर्ट टर्म कोर्स का मुझे दायित्व सौंपा, इसके लिए मैं बहुत ही आपकी आभारी हूँ। और मैं चाहती हूँ कि आपका संरक्षण, आपका हाथ हमेशा मेरे ऊपर बना रहे। मैं अपने साथियों में से, जैसे कि आपने बताया था, 2 लोगों को इस शॉर्ट टर्म कोर्स के बारे में कुछ कहने के लिए आमंत्रित करती हूँ। सबसे पहले मैं बुलाती हूँ प्रोफेसर अपर्णा जोशी, जो समाजशास्त्र विभाग में प्रोफेसर हैं, हेड हैं। वो हमारे गोकुलदास गर्ल्स हिंदू डिग्री कॉलेज की हैं। अपर्णा मैम आपका स्वागत है। अपर्णा मैम आप मुझे सुन पा रही हैं? जी मैम।
जी थैंक यू सो मच डॉक्टर सुनीति, and I thank you for giving me such an opportunity to talk about this course, this online MMTC program on NEP 2020 orientation and sensitization, which was hosted by Gokuldas Hindu Girls College Moradabad in collaboration with UGC MMTC AMU, was conducted from 20th to 28th August, and this program featured insightful sessions by diverse field of distinguished speakers, and the key topics included inclusive education, Indian knowledge system, pedagogy and assessment, curriculum design and development, holistic development of body, mind and soul, higher education and society, like this. And distinguished experts including Dr. Aftab Ahmad Ansari, Professor Sajid Jamal, Dr. Naren Kumar Tomar, Professor Charu Mehrotra, and Professor Reena Agrawal, Rajesh Kumar Dubey, and like many others, delivered very enlightening sessions. I would like to specially mention the organizers. First of all, Dr. Faiza Basi, who's director, UGC MMTC AMU Aligarh, and Professor Charu Mehrotra, Principal Gokuldas Hindu Girls College, Muradabad, who was the course coordinator, who curated this course brilliantly and brought together speakers from the diverse field, which enriched us regarding the NEP 2020. And I would like to mention Dr. Suniti Lata, whose course coordinator also worked tirelessly to the success of this program. The program successfully oriented and sensitized all the participants towards the vision of NEP 2020, emphasizing innovation, inclusivity, sustainability, value related based education, and academic excellence, and to carry forward the vision and spirit of NEP 2020 in our teaching and learning practices. As course coordinator Suniti Lata also mentioned, the teaching is a continuous process of learning, and this type of short-term courses enable us to learn and again make ourselves enabled to get into the new environment and pass these things to our students. I really thank everybody who joined sincerely this program, and MMTC AMU to give this opportunity to Gokuldas Hindu Girls College, and we really thankful to all the organizers, and I will take my leave after not taking so much of time. Thank you so much. Over to you, Suniti.
थैंक यू मैम, आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। डॉक्टर सरिता मैम जो अमरोहा से हैं, मैम आप मुझे सुन पा रही हैं सरिता मैम?
यस यस मैम, आई एम हियर। हाँ मैम, मैं सुन पा रही हूँ। मेरी आवाज भी क्लियर आ रही है ना? हेलो
जी जी, हम आपको सुन रहे हैं, आप प्लीज
ओके ओके
फीडबैक दीजिए।
ओके, थैंक यू मैम। नाउ रिस्पेक्टेड डायरेक्टर मैम, MMTTC फाइजा मैम, course coordinator Dr. Charu Mehrotra, co-coordinator Dr. Suniti ma'am, and all the resource persons, either they are here or not. सभी के लिए बाकी कोर्स की फॉर्मेलिटीज के बारे में पढ़ना मैम ने बहुत ब्यूटीफुली कहा, कब से कब तक शुरू हुआ, क्या कोर्स था। सो आई विल बी हैप्पी टू शेयर विद माय एक्सपीरियंसेस विद द प्रोग्राम नाउ। तो ऑल द रिसोर्स पर्सन, जो भी यहाँ रिसोर्स पर्सन आए थे जिन्होंने हमें NEP 2020 ओरिएंटेशन एंड सेंसिटाइजेशन प्रोग्राम पर अलग अलग व्यूज दिए, दे वर ऑल ऑसम। ऐसा नहीं है कि हम लोगों ने ये NEP 2020 नहीं पढ़ी, बिकॉज it was with our programs and very necessary for our teaching, but जो यहाँ हमें नई insight मिली, जो उसके particular key points मिले, particular topics मिले, वो बहुत knowledgeable and valuable थे। सभी रिसोर्स पर्सन ने, चाहे वो रेखा गुप्ता जी का IKS पर हो, साजिद सर का IKS पर हो, या फिर टेक्नोलॉजी से जोड़ने के लिए सैनिथल नाथन सर का हो, या फिर स्किल्स से जोड़ने के लिए प्रोफेसर खालिद आजम सर का हो, या फिर हमारे राजेश दुबे जी का जो नया विजन था कल, सभी लोगों ने एक नए पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हमको सारी चीजें बताई। तो जस्ट हम लोग कहते हैं कि टीचिंग इज नॉट अ टीचिंग ओनली, ये चीज हमें यहाँ प्रैक्टिकली भी फील हुई। एंड देन मैं कह सकती हूँ कि 360 एंगल से हम लोगों ने NEP को समझा, और इसके बारे में बहुत डिटेल स्टडी, बहुत नॉलेजेबल था। इधर बहुत सारे लोग क्रेडिट पॉइंट्स के लिए भी आते हैं, एंड आई एम ट्रूली सेइंग कि मेरा जो है ऐसा कोई वो नहीं था, विजन नहीं था। आई एम फ्रॉम प्राइवेट यूनिवर्सिटी, और अब मेरा उसमें गवर्नमेंट में जाने का कोई इरादा भी नहीं है, बीइंग द एज एंड माय एस्टेब्लिशमेंट हियर वेरी वेल। सो मेरा सिर्फ नॉलेज लेने का ही पर्पज इस कोर्स को ज्वाइन करने का था, एंड आई एम वेरी थैंकफुल टू द कोर्स program coordinators कि I was successful for that, and all the program was very successful and knowledgeable here. So ये तो रिसोर्स पर्सन्स का और उन्हीं के बारे में बात था। अभी मैं बात करती हूँ, यहाँ पर मैं देखती हूँ जब मैं डायरेक्टर मैम का नाम लेती हूँ, फाइजा मैम है, कोऑर्डिनेटर कोर्स कोऑर्डिनेटर मैम का नाम लेती हूँ चारू मैम है, और को कोऑर्डिनेटर मैम का नाम लेती हूँ सुनीति मैम। तो ये वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट मुझे यहीं से दिख जाता है, एंड आई एम वेरी हैप्पी हियर।
Listen to Shakila ma'am today.
Yes,
It
yes.
will be the cherry
Okay,
on top
okay.
of the cake.
Yes, the Shakila ma'am and all the persons whom I know or don't know, all the persons. So women empowerment is here, showing the education is going in the right direction. तो मैम आप फैजा मैम का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद है कि वो इस तरीके से बहुत ही वैल्यूएबल और कहना चाहिए जो गवर्नमेंट ने इसको जिस विजन से शुरू किया उसको आप इसको आगे बढ़ा रही हैं वेरी वेल तरीके से। चारू मैम ने अपना वो बहुत अच्छी तरीके से इस कोर्स को कोऑर्डिनेट किया। और जैसा कि कहते हैं कि जितना काम पर्दे के आगे होता है उतना ही काम पर्दे के पीछे होता है, तो यहाँ सुनीति मैम हमें पर्दे पर भी दिखाई देती हैं, बट उनका जो मैक्सिमम ऑफ द वर्क था वो पर्दे के पीछे था। एक व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप बनाना, सबको जोड़ना, सबको टाइमली इन्फॉर्म करना, सबको लिंक्स भेजना, हम सबकी क्वेरी का रिप्लाई करना, ये तो वो वर्क हैं जो हमें दिख रहे हैं। उसके अलावा ये वो वर्क हैं जो हमें नहीं दिखाई देते। पर्सनली अगर मैं बोलूं कि मैंने जब भी किसी क्वेरी को उनको फोन किया, शी ऑलवेज पिक्ड माई फोन एंड चाहे वो कोई भी टाइम था, मे बी ऑल द पर्सन्स आर हेयर विद जो होम एंड खास तौर पर फीमेल्स होम एंड कॉलेज दोनों जो सारी की सारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज उठाती हैं। सो आई एम वेरी थैंकफुल टू ऑल द पर्सन्स, सुनीति मैम टू, सभी को मिलाकर कि उन लोगों ने बहुत अच्छा किया। लेकिन जो टीचिंग का नया पर्सपेक्टिव है वो हम सब लोगों ने जाना, तो मैं भी बहुत ज़्यादा टाइम ना लेते हुए सबकी यहाँ पर बहुत ज़्यादा थैंकफुल हूँ और बहुत ज़्यादा ग्रेटफुल हूँ कि मैं जिस पर्पस से ये कोर्स ज्वाइन किया था कि मेरे को कुछ नॉलेज हो, मुझे कुछ नया विजन मिले। रीडिंग तो हम सब करते हैं, टीचिंग हम सब करते हैं, बट एक नए विजन, नए पर्सपेक्टिव, खास तौर पर एक नया जो हम लोग पीछे हैं उसमें काफ़ी टेक्नोलॉजी जोड़ी गई, एआई के बारे में बताया गया, नए कोर्सेज के बारे में बताया गया, नई चीज़ों के बारे में कि हम क्या कर सकते हैं अपने लेवल पर, और एक नया मोटिवेशन जो हमको मिला वो बहुत रिमार्केबल है। आई एम रियली वेरी थैंकफुल फ्रॉम माई हार्ट। थैंक यू मैम, मैं बहुत ज़्यादा समय आज फिर से नहीं लूँगी। थैंक यू टू ऑल, और इस वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट में मैं भी शामिल हूँ। थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक यू टू ऑल, थैंक यू।
थैंक यू मैम, आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। मैम जस्ट 1 मिनट मैम। यस मैम। मैम क्या मैं कोर्स की थोड़ी सी समरी बता सकती हूँ क्या, यदि आपकी अनुमति हो तो?
वो आप एंड में बता दीजिएगा, अभी तो
जी
पूरा
मैम,
कोर्स खत्म हुआ नहीं है, मैडम का हो जाए उसको इंक्लूड करके
जी जी
बताइए।
जी मैम जी। मैम मैं आपके लिए 2 लाइनें कहना चाहती हूँ, 2 से ज्यादा है थोड़ी सी, मैं तो लिखती नहीं हूँ लेकिन मैंने कहीं से चुराई है या ली है। ये मैम कोर्स के बारे में है और आपके बारे में है। शिक्षक प्रशिक्षण से बड़े शिक्षा का मान, शिक्षक प्रशिक्षण से बड़े शिक्षा का मान, आपने दिया हमें नव आयाम, हम सब में प्रेरणा का दीप जलाया, ज्ञान का अमृत सब में पहुंचाया, नेतृत्व ने बनाया पथ सरल, प्रशिक्षुओं का आत्मबल हुआ प्रबल, कृतज्ञ हृदय से करते हैं प्रणाम, स्वीकारे हमारा सादर अभिनंदन तमाम। थैंक यू मैम, थैंक यू। आपके सहयोग के बिना ये कार्यक्रम चलाना मैम संभव नहीं था, मेरे लिए या किसी के लिए भी। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैम आपका। मैम आपका माइक म्यूट है शायद मैम।
नहीं, मैंने अनम्यूट कर लिया है।
जी मैम, जी थैंक यू मैम।
तो शुक्रिया बहुत बहुत। My dear participants, one last time I'm greeting you here today, and I also have the opportunity to welcome our very esteemed Dr. Shakila Shamsu madam, who's joined us today all the way from Kerala. Actually, joining online all the way doesn't matter. One can join even in US from a very far distance. But what's important is the value that a resource person like Dr. Shakila Shamsu brings to a course of NEP. And I always say this, coming from the horse's mouth, what could be better than being told about the policy from somebody who was at the helm of the affairs when the policy was being drafted. Madam has always been very kind, very gracious to our participants, and especially to the MMTTC AMU. I take it's my pride and privilege that I welcome her here for this last session. आप देखेंगी सरिता मैम कि जो आपने विमेन एम्पावरमेंट की बात यहाँ पे कही, तो वो इट विल कम वन फुल सर्कल जब आप ये जो व्याख्यान है डॉक्टर शकीला शम्सू का उसे सुनेंगे। मैं चाहती थी कि हम इस सेशन के बाद ये वैलिडिक्टरी करें, लेकिन चूंकि मुझे एक मीटिंग में जाना है इसलिए हम इसे पहले कर रहे हैं। मैं अपने सारे प्रतिभागियों की बहुत हृदय से कृतज्ञ हूँ कि आप सबने अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम विश्वविद्यालय का चुनाव किया ये NEP ओरिएंटेशन प्रोग्राम करने के लिए, और इसमें बिलखुसूस मैं बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ हमारा जो गोकुलदास कॉलेज है मुरादाबाद में, और आपके माध्यम से डॉक्टर सुनीति लता, मैं आपकी प्रिंसिपल डॉक्टर चारू को भी अपना बहुत शुक्रिया कहना चाहूँगी कि उन्होंने हमारे साथ कोलैबोरेट किया। ज़्यादातर पार्टिसिपेंट्स आपकी वजह से इस कोर्स में आए, और इसके बाद इसका बहुत ही अच्छा कोऑर्डिनेशन डॉक्टर सुनीति ने किया। जिस तरह से वो हमेशा पसे पर्दा भी रही और सामने भी रही और सब कुछ मैनेज करती रही, ये देख करके हमारी बड़ी हौसला अफजाई होती है। मैं जाते जाते पार्टिसिपेंट से सिर्फ ये कहना चाहूंगी कि देखिए NEP 2020 के अभी सिर्फ 5 साल हुए हैं। It's almost a renaissance, as our Prime Minister says. It's not just a small reform, it's a renaissance that the Indian education system has never seen. So this course was just the first step. It was like handing over the key to you, and you have a world wide open for you to explore it. And with the help of the knowledge that has been shared to you and a little more that will be shared to you with you here today, you will certainly be on the right path to align yourself with the aims and objectives and mission and the transformative goals of this policy. I am very humbled and I am full of gratitude at the fact that the UGC MMTTC AMU has been able to be instrumental in doing this. Our college, our university, we have a historical vintage value for the entire subcontinent. So the fact that you had the opportunity to be trained at one of the top performing centers of the Aligarh Muslim University also had some tacit benefits. You saw the punctuality, you saw the regularity, you saw the efficiency and the productivity, and you saw the effective delivery and smooth coordination. Everything says something about quality of education. So here today, I'm taking from you the pledge of quality in education. Let me say one last thing to you. आपके certificates आपको कल या परसों एक डिजिटल कोड हम इसी ग्रुप पे डालेंगे, उसको यूज करके सर्टिफिकेट्स मिल जाएंगे। फर्स्ट MCQ आप दे चुके हैं, सेकंड MCQ आज के लेक्चर के बाद जब डॉक्टर सुनीति ने अपना वोट ऑफ थैंक्स कर दिया होगा तो सेकंड MCQ भी हो जाएगा। जरूर पार्टिसिपेट कीजिए। अगर रह जाता है किसी वजह से तो हम आपको सर्टिफिकेट तभी दे पाएंगे जब हम आपको दूसरा MCQ करा लें। तो बेहतर है कि आप आज अपने दोनों MCQ कर लें। वी आर ऑलवेज देयर फॉर यू. Please have a look at our schedule. We are organizing a lot of short-term courses and subject refresher courses also. And some of them are offline, in person. And I look forward to welcoming you all here at the Aligarh Muslim University in our campus. And I'm after the life of Shakila ma'am for a long time, calling her here to Aligarh. But I'm sure I will be successful one day in doing that. So thank you very much. Let us not take more of your time. It's over to Dr. Suniti to introduce our resource person today. And it's time for me to say goodbye. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Faiza.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Taru gate. मैम आपको मेरा नमस्कार। आप मुझे सुन पा रही हैं मैम?
Yes, I can hear you.
हमारे शॉर्ट टर्म कोर्स के 8वें दिन के आखिरी सेशन में आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत और अभिनंदन है। मैं डॉक्टर सुनीति लता, कोर्स कोऑर्डिनेटर, आपका हमारे सभी साथियों की तरफ से स्वागत और अभिनंदन करती हूँ।
Thank you.
मैम के बारे में क्या कहना है, आप सभी लोग सुन नहीं सकते मैम जैसी, समझ भी नहीं सकते कि मैम जैसी शख्सियत है। जब मुझे कल फाइजा मैम ने मैम के बारे में बताया तो मुझे खुद लगा कि मैं सुन के ही मैम का बायोडेटा एकदम आश्चर्यचकित हो गई कि ये सब हमारे लिए बहुत ज्यादा सौभाग्य का विषय है कि मैम जैसे महान व्यक्तित्व आज हमारे सामने है। मैम के बाद मैम बहुत ही अनुभवी और प्रतिष्ठित व्यक्तित्व हैं। आप लगभग 4 दशकों तक आपने शिक्षा और शैक्षणिक जगत की सेवा की है। आपने मुंबई विश्वविद्यालय इग्नू में 25 वर्षों तक अध्यापन और अकादमिक कार्य किया है। आप उच्च शिक्षा विभाग के OSD, नई शिक्षा नीति में शिक्षा मंत्रालय में शामिल हुई हैं। नई शिक्षा नीति 2020 की जो ड्राफ्ट कमेटी है मैम उसकी सचिव रही हैं। मैम ये हमारा सौभाग्य है कि अभी तक हमने नई शिक्षा नीति पे बहुत ही व्याख्यान सुने, लेकिन मैम आपने जिस तरह नई शिक्षा नीति का मसौदा तैयार किया वो हमें सुनने मिलेगा। ये मैम मैं शब्दों में उसको बयान नहीं कर सकती कि हम सबके लिए कितना बड़ा सौभाग्य की बात है। आप राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा एवं शिक्षा मिशन की नोडल अधिकारी रही हैं। इसके साथ साथ आप शिक्षा मंत्रालय में OSD 12वीं योजना और योजना आयोग में संयुक्त सलाहकार के रूप में रह चुकी हैं। आपकी रुचि के मुख्य क्षेत्र शैक्षिक योजना, नीति निर्माण एवं क्रियान्वयन, शिक्षक शिक्षा, सक्षम शिक्षा, समावेशी शिक्षा, मुक्त एवं दूरस्थ शिक्षा आदि हैं। आपकी कुछ अन्य उपलब्धियां शैक्षिक योजना नीति निर्माण में सहायता देना, राज्य और केंद्र सरकार को शिक्षा पर सलाह देना, परिवर्तनकारी शिक्षा को बढ़ावा देना, IDP और NEP कार्यान्वयन रणनीतियों को विकसित करना है। इसके साथ ही मैम आपको ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन गुरु 2025 अवार्ड मिला है। SP मुखर्जी शिक्षा पर प्रशंसा हुई है। 100 मुस्लिम वुमेन्स ऑनर्स इन केरला में आप भी शामिल हैं मैम। वर्तमान में आप सेंटर फॉर पब्लिक एंड रिसर्च कोची में सलाहकार के रूप में कार्यरत हैं। साथ ही साथ आप गवर्निंग काउंसिल इंडिया की मेंबर हैं। साथ ही आप NEP की प्रवक्ता भी हैं और इसके सफल प्रचार प्रसार के लिए आपका हमेशा सफल क्रियान्वयन रहा है। मैम आपका शैक्षिक योगदान बहुत ही ज्यादा समृद्ध है। अगर मैं आपके बारे में सभी बातें बताने लगी तो शायद ये सेशन बहुत कम पड़ जाएगा मैम, इसलिए बहुत ही आपका सूक्ष्म से सूक्ष्म, मैंने जैसे आपने कहा था सूक्ष्म से सूक्ष्म आपका बायोडाटा बता रही हूँ। मैम आपका सुनना हमारे लिए बहुत ही बड़ा सौभाग्य है। मैम 2 लाइनें आपके बारे में बोलती हूँ बस। नीति की राह दिखाएं जो शिक्षा का संदेश दे, NEP का स्वप्न संवारे करे नया परिवेश, शासन और प्रबंधन की गहराई से परिचित हैं, ऐसे विद्वान आज हमारे बीच उपस्थित हैं, ज्ञान ज्योति से अलौकिक करने आए हैं आज। हम करते हैं स्वागत, अभिनंदन आपका बारंबार बारंबार। थैंक यू मैम, थैंक यू सो मच मैम। ओवर टू यू। थैंक यू मैम।
Thank you, Dr. Suniti, and good evening to all of you. At the outset, I must say I am quite amazed after a long time to listen to such chaste Hindi that I have lost touch listening to such beautiful narration in Hindi since the time I've left Delhi. And so it has been a real pleasure to hear you, Dr. Suniti. I must appreciate the command that you have and the elegance with which you articulated that in Hindi. With all other speakers who spoke about the program, also gives me a lot of hope that these training programs are not being done at a very token level, and people are really carrying a lot of inputs and therefore are able to translate this in their own workspaces, which is the most important purpose of having the Malviya Mission Teacher Training Centers. Which earlier used to be the program that we called as the Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya National Mission on Teachers and Teaching, for which we had a lot of other activities, but those have now all got sort of clubbed together in actually promoting the idea of the national education policy. Now, in my normal format, if I had time of about exactly 1.5 hours, I would normally have invited a couple of you all to share your thoughts on the topic that I'm going to speak about, which is leadership and governance, and the whole idea of improving let us say, the higher education system's efficiency. But since there is a time limitation and I need to complete it by 6 o'clock, I think I will keep about 10 minutes or so towards the end for the interaction and get into the topic itself. I gather from the feedback that a couple of participants had said that you have really covered all the areas of NEP in terms of holistic and multidisciplinary education and understanding student diversity, the implications of linkages between higher education and society, skills and Indian knowledge systems, and so on. Now, this particular topic on leadership, governance, and management has been introduced as a part of the NEP sensitization to really carry forward the message to all of you all who may be at the level of a faculty in higher education, to understand that basically we all are academic leaders in the making. And so leadership become, many of us sit with this very, I would say, a kind of a wrong impression that I am only a faculty and I am not necessarily an academic leader, and that I become a leader only when I become the director of an institute or the principal of a college or a dean of a department and so on. It's not so. We are all actually, the moment we talk about leadership, we must understand as faculty itself, we are leaders. Okay, I have one more request, that I want all the participants to keep their cameras on when the session is ongoing. I don't like seeing only blank cubicles and blank screens over here with only the names of the participants written over there. So please switch on your videos. It is a basic norm of online session. I think we are already into it for about 5 years, and it is required that just as we have offline sessions in which we see the participants across, even in an online session, we must have all the cameras on during the entire continuation of the program. So unless you have a network problem, you're in travel or something like that, I can excuse you, but otherwise I want all the cameras to be on. In fact, what I tell all the coordinators to the centers are that if participants do not switch on the cameras, throw them out of the meeting room into the waiting room, but they will not be participating in the session at all. So please switch on your cameras and keep that on during the session that is happening. Now, coming to, as I said, firstly, why this topic is included is to look at leadership from 3 levels. At the entry level, who is like an assistant professor, you can say is the youngest level of an academic leader. Going further, you're looking at a mid-level leader, by which time you are almost like an associate professor, and you may be adding on to responsibilities, looking after your departmental projects and looking at the internships or some activity in addition to the normal activities that you have done when you initially started your career. And at the senior most level, when you are there as a director or a dean or a provost or a pro-vice chancellor or a vice chancellor, that becomes the senior management. Now, irrespective of whether you are at the entry level or at the middle level or at the senior level, there are certain qualities that a good leader, good academic leader needs to have. And this topic, as I said, is included. One, to make all faculty sensitized and almost internalizing the thought that they are firstly academic leaders, not just faculty, and that they are leaders in the making. Second, the emphasis that the national education policy put, that all higher education institutions must be headed only by academics who go on to rise to the leadership positions to head their institution, not by retired bureaucrats, not by people who are from political parties, or not people who have no connect with education at all. And therefore, the whole importance of academic leadership becomes even more double, because we are looking at a pipeline of creating academic leaders who can go on to hold senior academic leadership positions. Now, my topic here, having told you these 2 reasons or rationale for its inclusion in the training program, is firstly, as educators, to understand India's higher education landscape in terms of the major challenges that it faces and how many of these challenges have been addressed through the national education policy. So the first part relates to challenges and how does the NEP, through its recommendations, try to address these challenges or try to find solutions to these challenges. The second is about what is it in the NEP that looks at the instrumentalities that make for good governance in higher education in terms of 2 aspects. One is in terms of the leadership pipeline and what qualities a good leader needs to have. Second, in terms of an instrumentality that we call is an institutional development plan. And third is a related area of how does internal governance get improved. Now, while the title of the topic does not look at regulation, I will briefly touch upon what the NEP has visualized in terms of regulation in higher education also, which is the external part of the governance, where we are talking about the regulatory bodies and what changes we have envisaged. Now, coming to the challenges, it's not an exhaustive list. I'm talking about the major challenges. So all of us here would agree that India's higher education system is one of the largest in the world quantitatively in terms of numbers. We are about 1,200 universities, about 48,000 affiliated colleges, about 13 to 14,000 standalone institutions, largely in management education, pharmacy, teacher education, and so on. And we have as many as 1.6 million faculty and about 44 million students, as per the data that the All India Survey has brought out in its latest survey. Now, these numbers make us feel so proud that we are such a massive higher education system. But here is where the dampener comes in. The higher education system of India not only has a criticism of not being extremely qualitative in matching to the quantity that it has, but it is also having another problem, which is something systemic within itself. And that is the nature of the higher education institutions, making it a very complex entity to really govern effectively. You see, corporate entities are easy to govern because in corporate entities, you have only a fixed pattern in which corporate governance takes place. Whereas higher education institutions are not like corporate organizations or like industrial organizations. They are complex because of the fact that they belong to different categories, and they are, according to the different categories within which they fall, they have different governing patterns and governance procedures that they follow. To make it more explicit, when I say 1,200 universities and 48,000 affiliated colleges, that 48,000 affiliated colleges, of which you are also a part affiliated to some university, that itself is a major area of concern. And I'll talk about what the NEP said about affiliation. But the universities itself come from various categories, some governed by the government of India, some governed directly by the state, and some which we call as deemed universities, either of a state or of the national level. Deemed, of course, is not state level, it's always at the UGC level. And there are state private universities that are there. Now, in adding to all this, you have another dimension that some are unitary by nature, which means they are non-affiliating, and largely all the central universities are unitary by nature. And the state universities are largely the affiliating universities. Now, depending upon the category that they are, all the centrally funded institutions, like the central universities, the IITs, the NITs, the IIMs, the Indian Institutes of Science, Education and Research, all these, including the bulk of these are about 149 or 150 number. They are not bulkily, they are in a large bulk, they come from the Ministry of Education, but it is 17 ministries, for example, shipping, maritime education, fashion technology, design, all that come under different ministries. So 17 Government of India ministries, in which the largest share is the Ministry of Education, control about 150 institutions. And these 150 institutions get enormous funding directly from the government of India. Now, the funding that comes in makes it pan-India because they are a centrally funded institution, as opposed to a state institution, which is having a geographical jurisdiction confined to the geographical boundaries of its state. The difference between the two in terms of why it is becoming complex is that the governance structures of centrally funded institutions vary to a very great extent from the state institutions, from the deemed universities, from the private universities. They all have different governance structures. And we are saying in the policy that there are fundamental principles of good governance. that all categories of institutions will deploy in order to ensure efficiency and effectiveness of purpose. And efficiency is to ensure that an institution follows certain norms and standard operating protocols. Effectiveness comes in ensuring that there is good learning and good quality education, and it is at the same time ensuring principles of accountability, where they are answerable to every citizen or every member of this country, because it's public money that is being invested into education. Now, the funding itself is a cause of concern. 150 institutions which get funding, for example, AMU as a central university, would roughly get somewhere in the range of about 240 crores annually from the Ministry of Education. As opposed to that, a state university from a state government across India may maximum get something to the tune of about 20 to 30 crores. This may come in partially from the state exchequer, or it may come in through the development grants that the UGC gives you. But it doesn't exceed, in any case, anything beyond 30 crores or so. Now, where is the dichotomy happening? The 44 million students that I told you, 94% of that student enrollment is in the state institutions. Only 6% are studying in the centrally funded institutions. So this is where 150 institutions known to be funded directly by the Government of India ministries get enormous funding but cater to only 6% of the total enrollment. As opposed to that, the remaining, out of that 1,200 universities, about 900 being state universities, get inadequate funding. In no manner you can compare that funding to the central level, and they cater to 94% of the student enrollment. This has obviously got a correlation, which I'll come to. But more, what did the NEP try to say in this? All that the NEP said is that whether you are public funded or whether you are private funded, you will be governed by the same set of norms and standards, so that you ensure equity, you ensure access, you ensure quality, you ensure affordability, and you all are accountable institutions. And the second part of it, we have also said that you will also ensure, private institutions will also ensure scholarships and ensure that for the purposes of equity, you will make measures so that every aspiring student can get admission not only to a public funded institution, but to a private funded institution also. So the public and the private come by the same lens. That is the first principle of good governance. Second, that equity or access, none of these are compromised, irrespective of the character of that institution. But more important to that,
उसको भी दे दूंगी, नीलम को भी दे दूंगी, ठीक है?
of trying to say that
ठीक,
higher
ठीक.
education institutions need not be categorized by the ownership or by the source of its funding, but rather by the functions that it performs. So I believe when I heard Dr. Sarita, she said that you all have gone through the national education policy, and I take it that at least all of you have read through the 66-page document. I may urge you all as educators to go through the committee's report, which of course is a voluminous 484-page document. But I would really feel that as educators, you must read through that also, because it elaborates in detail many factors which do not get reflected in policy. You see, when we write policies, we write it very crisp, because we don't expect people to read 484-page reports. So we write it very crisp. So when you read a 66-page document, it is definitely not a précis of the 484-page document. But if you read through the actual report of the committee, you get much more valuable insights. Now, in the NEP, we clearly said we are restructuring India's higher education landscape to talk about teaching intensive universities, research intensive universities, multidisciplinary education and research universities. And on affiliation, we said that by 2035, at least not later than 2040, that we will do away with affiliation and where we will have degree granting autonomous colleges. Now, let me clarify the research intensive and teaching intensive. Instead of saying whether a central institution or a state institution or a private institution, can we say that a institution, HEI, or a higher education institution, identifies itself by the core function? When we say teaching intensive, we mean that it is largely focusing on undergraduate education, and in some areas or in some disciplines, because of the strength of the department in terms of faculty and infrastructure and teaching learning resources, we can have postgraduate and doctoral studies. So largely UG, but in some disciplines and some departments may be PG. That is teaching intensive. If it is research intensive, focus is largely on PG and doctoral, and in some disciplines we may offer undergraduate program. One which combines both these are what we call multidisciplinary education and research universities. Now please understand, we are restructuring an existing system itself in terms of the institution having focus. And if you ask me the question, have we changed the names? Are we calling them like that? No, that doesn't matter. Because as I said, when I talk to you about an IDP, which is your strategic action plan, whether your college wants to become a teaching intensive university or whether your college wants to become by 2040 a degree granting autonomous college will be determined by the action plan that you're making. And that is your governance strategy. That is where that becomes important. Now, institutions like AMU, most of the bulk of the central universities, as well as a few very large state universities, can think in terms of converting themselves to become multidisciplinary education and research universities, MERUs as we call them, because they not only have arts, science, commerce, they have engineering, they have medicine, they have pharmacy, they have nursing, they have law, they have architecture, they cover various branches of study. And therefore, by nature, they are amenable and are having an enabling ecosystem that can help them to move towards becoming multidisciplinary education and research universities. Now, for affiliation, what have we said is something that would be making a lot of sense to you all, because bulk of you are from affiliated colleges. And while independent India thought affiliation was a boon, we have clearly realized and recognized, and it comes even from my experience in the Planning Commission, when we wrote both the 11th plan and the 12th plan, that we have to abandon affiliation, because at one time affiliation was seen as a mechanism to increase access to higher education, because it is not viable to set up universities for students to come and join higher education. So we created this idea that there is a host university and it can have under its umbrella and under its wings a number of affiliated colleges. What has happened over time in the last 70 odd years is that it has become a bane and a curse. Why? Because the kind of numbers of affiliated colleges to a given university is become more than unviable. While 100 maybe, when we wrote the 11th plan, I think we wrote that can we restrict affiliation to 100 colleges. We reconsidered that and we said that, okay, let us accept that India has still not reached where we can abandon affiliation. But what are we seeing? 1,200 colleges under one university. Maximum, I would say, the limited numbers may be 300. So between 300 to 1,200 colleges under a single university, where that university is not making any effort to check whether the affiliated colleges are offering good quality education. Teachers are not there, infrastructure is not there, teaching learning resources are not there, There is no monitoring and control over the quality in the college, and the student is getting a certificate of the host university. Now that is where the entire dilution has taken place. And the only thing that an affiliated college does is that its examinations are conducted as per the timetables created by the host university. Beyond that, there is absolutely no mechanism that a host university does to ensure quality. I am not trying to say that all affiliated colleges come under that. I am only trying to say that under the care of affiliation, say my own alma mater, Bombay University, has got extremely good affiliated colleges. But there are colleges which offer very poor quality education, but the certificate comes from the University of Mumbai. And therefore, here is a student, one coming from an absolutely low grade college, who also has a certificate of Bombay University, and another coming from a very well established college of very high quality, also having Bombay University. Now that is clearly not acceptable. That is why we said that over a period of 15 to 20 years, let us move away from affiliation to create degree granting autonomous colleges. Now your question to me can be, are we suggesting that by 2040, if there are 48,000 affiliated colleges, we will have 48,000 degree granting autonomous colleges? No. There will be a lot of churning that will happen and a lot of rationalization that will happen. Some colleges already having potential for excellence can easily convert to become degree granting autonomous colleges. Some existing autonomous colleges can go on to become teaching intensive universities. So in this process, and some degree colleges can come together to constitute what we call cluster university. The only rider and the only caveat to this recommendation was that suppose a particular affiliated college is located in a very remote, inaccessible, geographically inaccessible area and catering to the needs of tribal population or the so-called SCDG categories of people. In such cases, we may allow for affiliation to continue so as to meet with the goals of both equity and access. So we have to see that a governance strategy has to be thought about by institutions. That is where all of you are the leaders. You need to carry forward this message to your institutions, that your own college should not be as it is today. At least in 15 years, can we convert to become a degree granting college, or can we convert to become a teaching intensive university? Please understand that over time, unviable higher education colleges will be forced to shut down unless you work on it right away. And it is not very far off. 15 years goes like this in a jiffy. Maybe we are not there, but it is important that our institution remains. I'm sure we all have a sense of connect to the institution where we are working. So this is where the first governance change is happening. Now, as I said, the centrally funded institutions catering to 6% student population and 94% students in the state institutions with minimal funding coming in. What is the direct hit? The poor quality of education. So while India boasts about high quantitative numbers, we are taking a very strong beating on the quality of our higher education institutions. And that stems from, it is very evident in any global rankings, we can hang our heads in shame. If you have 1,200 universities and less than 30 feature in the global rankings, whether it is Shanghai rankings or Times rankings or QS rankings, it is not something that we are proud about at all. And if we started NIRF and many states started their own ranking frameworks, it is to give an impetus so that institutions can go forward to think in terms of better rankings. The entire reforms in accreditation. Please understand, in India, nowhere in the world, accreditation is mandatory. It is always voluntary. But we would like to see more and more institutions going in for accreditation. You will be surprised to know that out of these entire numbers that I talked about, 48,000 colleges, 13,000 standalone institutions, and 1,200 universities, and so on, less than 20% of our institutions are going in for accreditation. 80% of them are out of that ambit, which means they are not even daring to come forward to assess their own quality parameters and benchmarks, which is untenable in a country like us. If India wants to say that we are going to be the global superpower and so on, we must wake up to the fact that our higher education institutions must reflect good quality education. Now, that having been said, what is the reason for the poor quality? One, of course, is the limited funding, the lack of infrastructure, lot of teacher vacancies, but there are other reasons also. The two major reasons are that most of our colleges and universities have been focusing on teaching and not research. And one of the parameters for excellence for all rankings is the quality of patents and publications and research. So teaching and research are not to be seen as separate activities in an academic world. They too complement and supplement one another. And that is why in the 4-year undergraduate program, under the common courses, we are talking about research skills. We are talking about research internships. And we brought the 4th year with a research component. So teaching and research must go hand in hand. Faculty must be given sabbaticals to participate in conferences and seminars and programs which will ensure their research capabilities. At today itself, my own colleague from Planning Commission, Dr. Furkan Kamar, has written about this entire menace of what we thought publish or perish. And it has resulted in very poor quality publishing, because we are saying for the sake of publishing, we have to publish. What is the quality of that publication? So teaching and research needs to go in hand to hand. We need to have enablers by which faculty can bring out good quality research. We need to nurture research in our students, and we have to have better research outputs going forward. You stretch that argument further and you say that if India's higher education institution must feature in the global rankings, it is not adequate to merely have only research, but also encourage innovation and give scope for innovation clubs. I don't know, in your own institution, maybe during the last 10 minutes you can share with me, do you conduct hackathons? Do you conduct idea clubs? Do you conduct programs by which students can come out with new ideas? Do you as teachers innovate on new pedagogies? Or do we continue with the same old pattern of chalk and talk and lecturing? These are ways in which the quality of education goes up. The second part relates to the artificial divide that we created between knowledge and skills, where we thought that academic degrees is only for knowledge dissemination, which is cognitive or theoretical by nature and not experiential. And so skills never got into it at all. And now we try to rectify that by ensuring that your 4-year undergraduate program have skill enhancement, and it is a reflection of the 4 pillars of learning, which is learning to know and learning to do, going side by side along with it. So skills, all the 21st century skills, all the kind of competencies that are being asked by those sectors which deal with skills, be it the manufacturing sector, be it the medium and small scale industries, be it the hospitality sector, be it the hotel industry, be it retail management, in all these areas, it is not adequate for children to merely get knowledge, but also get hands-on training in industry and therefore the skill and the experiential part of it. Along with that, the problem solving and so on. Stretching that is what you commonly hear, that higher education is not to make people just job seekers, but to become job creators. What does that mean? It means your institution should have very strong tie-up with industry. Industry academia cells, have startups, have incubation centers, so that you stretch skilling to entrepreneurial education. So quality of higher education in India, if we need to remedy, the policy talked about reimagining vocational education, talked about a capacity building of teachers, and I'll come to that in a short while. The whole idea of having startups and incubation centers and so on, so that you have a lot of industry interface, and students who pass out of universities and colleges do not land up becoming unemployed, not because jobs are not available, but because they lack what we call the employability skills. So the lack of employability skills is what the NEP tried to address. Now, coming to 2 or 3 other major challenges. When we talk in terms of higher education, we need to understand the delivery of higher education has changed over time. When we studied, you are talking about face-to-face education, where there is no technology involved. Thanks to the advent of the information and communication technologies, thanks to all the forms of mass media, thanks to the satellites and various other aspects of technology, the technology integration has to happen at a much larger scale. And it is not for somebody else. It is for us in our classrooms. How do you integrate technology for effective learning? Not in terms of an effective teaching, obviously, but in also to understand that there can be massive open online courses that SWAYAM offers. There can be open universities which talk about distance education. But in our own classrooms, hybrid models of teaching, blended models of teaching, and moving towards virtual learning are changes that we need to factor in. We cannot, as teachers who come from a generation not used to computers, ignore the fact that our students are those born with those technologies, and it is very important that they have an enriched learning experience by using hybrid models. Just for an example, suppose you are having a class of 1 hour to teach any topic, and all of us carry some gadget with us. At the most minimum level, it may be a smartphone. Any video related to your topic, just play it for about 3 minutes so that you provoke students to ask questions and interact with you. The method in which you use technology, use it like our friend said, that behind the scenes, Dr. Suniti was having a WhatsApp group and she was interacting. That has to happen even for our students, and where all their activities and their assignments and formative assessment activities are all done using technology. So integrating technology, adopting new models, but being very conscious that in the world of artificial intelligence and chat GPT and generative AI and robotics and big data and so on, we cannot have education not embracing technology at all. And we as teachers can be learners so that we are able to use technology in an effective manner. And please attend capacity building hands-on workshops, because very few of us, at least I am not aware, like many of my very adept people on an online session, how am I able to use technology other than what we are doing right now. But where I give you an activity where with my own computer I can access and see what you all are doing, all this you need to have a lot of training. The other part relates to diversity. And that is not, I mean, while we are talking about NEP saying 50% gross enrollment ratio by 2035, which in absolute numbers would translate to something like about 80 million students by 2035. This has to be across all social, economic, geographical categories of people. So the fact remains that in Indian context, there are a lot of social, economic, geographical, gender disparities. And NEP has tried to address that in its chapters 6 and 14 for school and higher education respectively, by saying that special interventions must be taken to reduce the disparities in the level of participation by children coming from these sections of the SCs, the STs, the OBCs, the linguistic and religious minorities, the urban poor, children with disabilities, physical disabilities, learning disabilities, girls, women, transgenders, people living in hilly areas, vulnerable sections like migrant people, all of them must be provided opportunities for equal participation, because please understand, no nation can grow effectively unless it is sustainable growth, unless all people grow together. And while in articulation you are talking about sabka saath and sabka vikas, it is important that you actually do interventions through various schemes, through various activities at a very simple level. If I may give you an example, how many of us enter our class and try to find out what is the social economic composition of our students? I'm not meaning that you ask a student what is your caste or what is your religion or what is your language or whether you are what is your income level or so on. It is that we are sensitive to the diversity of our class. And it is important that the location of your institution, how many of you have ever asked students to study whether the neighboring constituency from where your college is, whether children in that age group of 18 to 23 are coming into higher education? This is all our social responsibility. Please understand that. It is not somebody else's job. It is our job to ensure that our college is catering to the higher education needs of the people around it, which happens to be our catchment area. Are we even aware of it, or we are just satisfied by knowing that students are coming to the class? What I'm trying to provoke you to understand is that please don't think that I have an appointment letter which tells me I'm an assistant professor in this. I get into a class, I teach something and I walk out and my work is over. It cannot happen unless we are conscious whether we are reaching out to the socially and economically disadvantaged groups. And the three functions of higher education, teaching, research, and social engagement, this third function is what I'm trying to say, which will limit and reduce the existing disparities and which will ensure sustainable and inclusive and equitable higher education. And that is not merely by having government documents or merely by articulating something in a speech. It is about doing it on ground. And we also have to take up the onus and the responsibility to ensure that we do it. The next challenge that we are talking about is one in which I had a lot of arguments with people who were there from the bureaucracy. And that is the quality of teaching. The bulk of the bureaucracy, sadly, believe that India's higher education system is very poor and of very bad quality because of us teachers. Because they say that we teachers came into teaching because we could not get any other job, and that teaching is come as a compulsion to us, not because of our passion, and we lack the professionalization, and we are not serious and not rigorous about it. That is how in the government, when I was there, we came out with that scheme itself of National Mission on Teachers and Teaching. It is very important for us as teachers to be able to actually prove that we have and we are ensuring good graduate outcomes and that we bring about good learning outcomes. So in order to combat that, it is important that we teachers are professionalized. And that is how we are talking in terms of having these kind of capacity building programs, which are not a one-off event. It is a continuous capacity building for continuous professional development and for continuous leadership development. Ensuring that, for that we wrote in the policy that it is not enough to say that there is poor quality teaching if my college does not have a good washroom. I cannot even go to a toilet, then I cannot perform. So the basic amenities that are needed in terms of ensuring good working conditions, ensuring that there is a good staff room where the teachers can sit, all these basic amenities have to be there. That is at the fundamental level. Then the teaching learning resources. Do I have all the teaching learning resources available so that a teacher can also perform effectively? So the NEP says invest in that. Third, don't overload the teacher with non-academic activities. It does not happen largely in higher education, but in school education, they go for census, they go for elections, they go for surveys, they go for a number of things, including preparing the midday meal itself. Whereas in higher education, we are overloaded only because we are preparing a lot of forms for either NAC or for ranking or for All India survey and so on. And that is how, for ameliorating that, we are talking about one nation, one data, where we are saying that all this data that is for us is given by an institution. Retrieve what you want for the purpose that you need. When you want it for mere data of All India survey, use that data. When you want it for accreditation, use that data. When you want it for ranking, use that. But don't ask faculty to keep redoing. And that comes because of the improper management information systems and not having very good enterprise resource planning mechanisms, which is a part of the good governance. The two or three other factors which are challenges. One is in terms of the balancing between autonomy and accountability. Second is in terms of the funding. And third is in terms of internationalization. Now, autonomy and accountability. As a college affiliated to a university, the level of autonomy that you enjoy is very, very limited. And as such, generally we believe that all higher education institutions must have a degree of autonomy. But at the same time, autonomy, which is academic, administrative, and financial, cannot reduce the importance of accountability. Autonomy in academic matters would have accountability that learning outcomes are good. Autonomy in administration should ensure that rules and regulations and governance are done. Autonomy in finance would mean that we will be accountable to every taxpayer for the money that has been invested in public funded institutions. And autonomy in financial also means that you may have reduced funding coming from the government and you may have to find out revenue and sources of revenue so that you become self-generating and having your own sources of funding. Now, the internationalization, India's higher education sees systematically every year about 7.5 million, maybe next year it will be 10 million, 7.5 lakhs, maybe next year it will be 10 lakhs of students going out of India and only 40,000 students coming into India. And we wrote in the NEP that India wants to become a Vishwa Guru. And we talked about student mobility, faculty mobility, credit mobility through joint degrees, twinning programs, dual degrees. And we also talked in terms of foreign universities setting up their campuses here and our institutions setting up their campuses outside. The fact remains about two things in 21st century higher education. One is collaboration for multidisciplinarity, for research, for collaboration with industry, for collaboration with research institutions. The other is mobility. And whether we like it or not, any institution, if it needs to keep going forward, has to ensure internationalization. And you need to start looking at it in your own university, which programs you can think of joint degrees or dual degrees. So the higher education ecosystem is not something that exists in isolation from what is happening in the world. And higher education is the key to all social progress, economic development, political achievements, and national growth and global development. So we must, as institutions, understand we are engines of growth, and we as faculty, who are the major stakeholder, must empower our students so that they are able to become productive individuals. We also must recognize that our higher education institutions must become well-governed institutions so that going forward, our institutions can get good ranking, can have good accreditation, and get globally recognized as institutions of excellence. Now, for this, leadership matters. And for this, good governance matters. So when we talk about a good leader, we are talking about basically 10 qualities that a good leader has. One is visioning and strategizing. Every one of us, I said, is an academic leader. And therefore, all of us must be capable of visioning and strategizing. You all may have your own college website, which articulates a vision and a mission statement. Please read through that and have an understanding yourself whether that vision and mission is relevant today. A vision and mission created when a college is formed or a university is created 50 years back, 60 years back, 150 years back, cannot have a vision and statement that is relevant to today's times. Revisit your vision, mission, goals, and objectives. So visioning and strategizing is the first quality of a good leader, and I've given you an exercise for you to do your own exercise in terms of assessing your own college website and seeing what its vision and mission reads like, and what your own host university's vision and mission and goals and objectives. Does it factor in technology? Does it factor in sustainability? Does it factor in inclusion? Does it factor in skills? These are all the changes. Does it factor in creativity? Does it factor in many things that we are talking about in this modern world? Always your vision has to be futuristic. It cannot be taking into account only the current things. Therefore, that is the first quality. A good leader, secondly, must have very effective communication skills. Unlike industry, as I told you at the beginning, where there are only two categories of people, the employer and the employee, or the managers and the team employers. Higher education institutions have academics, they have non-academics, there are technical staff, there are students, there are menial staff, there are a variety of people. And it is very important that a good leader communicates to all these categories of people. Why? Because the third quality is about preventing conflicts, and if conflicts happen, good conflict resolution and effective decision making, going to the fourth quality. The fifth and the sixth are something that may not directly relate to academics, but moment you become a leader, like a dean or a director or a HOD, you need to have administrative skills and knowledge of administrative management and knowledge of financial management. And the other three or four qualities are related to students and teachers. Ultimately, a college or a higher education institution is there for good quality education. Therefore, how do you improve teaching? How do you ensure learners learn effectively? How do you promote research? How do you promote innovation? Is all about creating that ecosystem. Equally important, how do you ensure student diversity and grievance redressal, and ensure that there is a non-discriminatory approach, and you have bodies or cells that are there which look at ragging, which look at discrimination, which look at gender discrimination, many aspects. The same with teachers, ensuring that they can do good quality teaching by giving them opportunities for capacity building, research, and so on. So these ambit, and the last 2 points relate, as I told you last time, relate to ensuring better funding and internationalization. Now for this, NEP has said every college, every university prepares what we call an institutional development plan. An IDP is nothing but a strategic action plan. My first point that I started, whether as a college affiliated you want to become a degree granting autonomous college, that is where an IDP comes in. An IDP comes in where every college works out a plan of action, a strategic action plan for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years. And this is not done by someone outside. Don't give it as a contract to a third party agency. It has to be prepared by a task force which has student representatives, teacher representatives, parent representatives, management representatives, retired educationists, industry people, civil society, local community, sports persons, artists coming together and envisioning an action plan based on, at the fundamental level, doing first a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges or threats. What are the strengths of my institution? What I need to build on? What are the weaknesses that I need to overcome? Where are the opportunities for my growth? What are the challenges and how do you address those challenges? If you Google my name, you will get an article where I have really elaborated at length, because I guide institutions to prepare IDPs. I have elaborated on length the step by step on how to prepare an IDP. An IDP is a very clear articulation of an institution's internal exercise of preparing for itself an action plan for coming years. And this will clearly have clearly articulated goals with breakdown targets, quantifiable, with timelines and with budgets. And it is not a one-time exercise that you make it and throw it on the top of a library shelf. It is a live document which will help the institution to see that always at a point of reference and to keep monitoring it and understanding, yes, we could not achieve this target. Simple example, GER has to be raised 50%. What is my current college enrollment? Does it represent SCs, STs, OBCs, minorities, girls, transgenders, children with disabilities? Where are they? What is the catchment area? Are we representing that? What steps can we take to achieve that? Every year, what additional enrollment can I get? These are things to be achieved in timelines and for which specific activities, door-to-door surveys, going and meeting people, talking to people and finding out why children are not coming in, going in for advocacy. These steps have to be articulated. I just gave you one simple, I don't have the time for that, but I'm just giving you one example. Or accreditation. Did we go for accreditation? If not, can we go in for accreditation? If we have already done accreditation, can we enhance our grade? What steps can we take for that? These are to be done in your IDP. Therefore, create a collective group and make an IDP. Two last points so that I can stop and give you 10 minutes. One is on the internal governing bodies. All of us know we have in our colleges and in our universities, academic councils, executive body, senate, or many other nomenclatures that vary depending on the nature of that institution. We have said in the NEP that just as the IDP is made by a very strong task force, we must also have an empowered body which can either replace an existing executive council or so on, or it can be a new body which will also be a democratically elected body from within with very less governmental representation. It must be, as I said, people within the institution. I already mentioned teacher representatives, senior management, community leaders, retired educationists, these people all together. And please understand, in higher education, we have done one major mistake of keeping parents out of the system. In schools, we have them, but in higher education, we somehow thought that parents don't come into the picture. Not in an Indian context, where in India, a parent will take care of their child, even if that person happens to be 40 years of age. So we have had parents as major stakeholders and must be a part of that exercise. This empowered board of governors will ensure that we follow democratic norms so that we are following technology for fair play. We are ensuring that there will be no commercialization. We are ensuring that there is equity. We are ensuring that there is good quality. We are ensuring that we have a very effectively governed higher education institution, following the statutes, giving autonomy where it is needed, not ensuring too much of over-regulation, ensuring that there is a balance. All this needs to be done through that body which takes care of a very democratic process of good governance. And the last part I just talk for a second or a minute is the external regulation. We have made a very major recommendation of overhauling the external regulation. There are 17 regulatory bodies: the UGC, the AICT, the NCT, the Medical Commission, the Pharmacy Council, the Council of Architecture, the Indian Nurse. There are 17 such bodies. And we have said that these 17 bodies need to be overhauled with two fundamental principles. One, that there should be separation of powers, and two, that there should be a light but tight regulation. Now, the UGC, as the super regulator in our country, takes care of funding, takes care of accreditation, takes care of academic standards and setting, and also takes care of accreditation. Now, these four functions cannot happen in the same body. That's why we talked about a National Higher Education Regulatory Council for regulation, a National Accreditation Council, which will subsume your existing NAC and NBA and have other accrediting agencies, a Higher Education Grants Council for funding, because UGC becomes null and void once that act comes, and General Education Council for academic standard setting, and all other bodies like the AICT, NCT, and so on will become professional standard setting bodies. So 4 independent verticals for regulation, for accreditation, for funding, and academic standard setting, and an umbrella body that we call the Higher Education Commission of India. Now, this is to come about through an act of the Parliament, and moment it comes about, the act of the UGC, the act of the NCT, the act of AICT all become null and void, and they get converted into different bodies that meets as per what NEP has recommended. Though we have recommended it in the policy, though it was announced by the Honorable Finance Minister in her budget speech in 3 budget announcements, and which was also in this monsoon session of the Parliament given as a statement on the floor of the House by the Honorable MOS of the Ministry of Education, this has not yet been introduced in the Parliament. The concern would come largely because education is a subject in the concurrent list. State governments have to have a lot of consensus building, and it takes a lot to bring about a major paradigm change in the regulatory system that we have proposed in the NEP. I think I'll stop over here and keep about 8 minutes or so for interaction. Thank you.
थैंक यू मैम आपके सारगर्भित व्याख्यान के लिए। अगर हमारे साथी में से कोई भी मैम से कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं तो पूछ सकते हैं।
मैम, मैं जरूर जानना चाह रही थी। एक्चुअली ये जो न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में जो जिस तरह से 1935 सॉरी
one request, please introduce yourself and the discipline you are teaching and the institution you are affiliated.
जी मैम। हाँ, मैं डॉक्टर अपर्णा तिवारी गोकुलदास डिग्री कॉलेज से जो ये कार्यक्रम चला रहे हैं, और मैं सोशियोलॉजी स्ट्रीम से हूँ सर। मैम मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी कि जिस तरह से ये न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में कॉलेजेस के लिए ये कहा गया है कि वो इंस्टीट्यूशंस अपने आप को सेल्फ स्टैब्लिश करें, सेल्फ डिग्री ओरिएंटेड करें, और साथ ही साथ एक तरीके से अपना खर्चा भी खुद ही चलाए वाला टाइप का किया हुआ है ना। इसका 2035 का शायद क्राइटेरिया वो दे रखा था कितने समय तक करें शायद, लेकिन अभी आपने 15 इयर्स का है तो शायद 2040 तक, है ना। मैम मैं ये जानना चाह रही थी कि आजादी से पहले हमारी क्या स्थिति थी और आजादी के बाद लोगों ने अपनी डोनेट किया और तब ये बिल्डिंग्स जैसे गोकुलदास है ये डोनेटेड उससे ये फंड से चला है ये कॉलेज। बाद में एड सरकार ने देना शुरू किया और आज जब इस तरीके की बात की जा रही है, जो अभी तक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए जूझ रहा है, अभी प्रॉपर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर नहीं है, टीचर्स नहीं है, प्रॉपर एड नहीं है, और इस बीच में ये कहा जाता है कि आप सेल्फ एडेड हो जाए। क्या ये पॉसिबिलिटी है मैम? जबकि हमारे यहाँ, मुझे जहां तक लगता है कि 70 to 80% इसी तरीके से एडेड या फिर इसी तरीके के प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस वर्क कर रहे हैं। जैसे सेल्फ फाइनेंस कॉलेजेस की कंडीशंस बहुत खराब है मैम, जो ये यूनिवर्सिटीज ने सेल्फ फाइनेंस कॉलेजेस को वो किया। तो मैं ये जानना चाह रही हूँ कि ये पॉसिबल है धरातल पर?
ओके ओके, कहने के लिए जैसे आपने बताया ये बहुत ही चैलेंजिंग है, इट इज नॉट समथिंग दैट इज इजी टू अचीव, बट अगर हम चाहते हैं कि लेट अस से 2050 तक हम चाहते हैं कि इंडिया की हायर एजुकेशन एक दूसरी सीमा तक हम पहुंचाए, तो इवन दो वी नो ये ग्राउंड लेवल चैलेंजेस है, ये अलग बात है कि आपके संस्था में somebody has donated, a good magnanimous person like Gokul Das has donated, there are many such institutions like that, but the fact remains that it is not just enough to have good intent. You must have all the teacher positions filled in, you must have all the good infrastructure, and over a period of time you must become self-sustaining, because there is no way, you must understand, that the government can continuously provide grants or funds. You may not like to hear it, it is not something many of us would like to hear it. What we are trying to say is that जहां तक सरकार की बात है, ग्रांट्स जो आती है आप और हम जैसे टैक्स पेयर से, इसी से आती है। सरकार अलग सा कोई पैसा नहीं बनाती है, सरकार जो बनाती है जो टैक्सेस से लेते हैं, और टैक्स जैसे आप जानते हैं जब भी टैक्स बढ़ती है, आई डोंट थिंक वी आर हैप्पी अबाउट इट। और ये इस तरह से कहना कि टैक्स हम देना भी नहीं है और संस्था भी चलनी चाहिए, ये these are not two things that go together. टैक्स अगर आप चाहते हैं कि सरकार ही सारे खर्चा मीट करे, ये बोझ भी किसी और पे नहीं जाने वाली है, ये हम पे ही आएगी, ये हम टैक्स पेयर्स पे ही आएगी। इसीलिए ये जरूरी होती है कि इंडस्ट्री जो होती है उनका एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, हमारे जो ग्रेजुएट्स निकलते हैं वो जाती है इंडस्ट्री में, और इंडस्ट्री को भी एक सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है, और उनको जो CSR फंड्स है इसके लिए उनको टैक्स एग्जेम्पशन मिलती है कि हमारे संस्थाओं को जो सपोर्ट करेंगे लाइब्रेरी बनाने में, कंप्यूटर लैब बनाने में, बस फैसिलिटी प्रोवाइड करने में, हॉस्टल्स मेंटेन करने के लिए, व्हाई शुड वी पे आवर मनी? व्हाई डोंट दे टेक अप दैट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी? वी डोंट टॉक टू देम, वी डोंट लेवरेज दोस फंड्स एट ऑल। इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट व्हाट यू आर सेइंग, that the government cannot by itself for eternity, for an infinite period of time, continue to say that it can maintain a good college, ensuring all these things. Therefore, alumni funding, public-private partnership, sources of raising revenue by sharing our resources, clustering institutions to share resources, bringing in industry so that they use their CSR funds. The whole purpose is that we have to understand that it is not because we like it, but to become self-sustaining is almost a reality. Sarkar kis cheez mein, I am telling you from my planning commission background, not my ministry background. We used to sit for meetings with the state governments. Now when the state government comes, any state government, there are concerns. Good roads have to be there, electrification has to be there, good highways have to be built, 24 hours electricity should be there, that we should provide cooking facilities, that we should have good airports, we should have good railway stations. These are all core development other than industry, where you're talking about different type. This is all coming from the state budget. Now, we were from the education department. जो बजट लेके आते हैं, बजट में ज्यादा फोकस ये एरियाज पे है, और शिक्षा, हेल्थ, इस पे कम एम्फोसिस होती है। हमारी पर्पस, हमारी रोल प्लानिंग कमीशन में बैठ के यही था कि उनको ये समझाए कि आपके रोड्स होने के लिए आपको इंजीनियर्स चाहिए और वो शिक्षा से आती है, तो आप एम्फेसिस एजुकेशन पे दीजिए. That is when they set aside funds for education. These are realities. So what we may want and wish is not so easy to achieve. We have to wake up to the fact, if not tomorrow, at least 20 years from now, and that's a long period of time. If we do good strategic planning, ये workable हो सकती है. But I know it is not an easy task. बहुत सारे दिक्कतें होती है. Lot of financial planning, lot of coordinated effort. With all this, it is possible that many of our institutions can overcome some of their existing challenges. I know, Dr. Aparna, it is not so easy to give you an answer in 2 minutes. If I was taking a session for another 1 hour, I would have actually explained to you how this can be done also.
Thank you, ma'am.
थैंक यू मैम. आपके
Excuse me, ma'am. Give me
Hello.
few minutes. Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead, Aparna.
Yes, ma'am. This is Rashmi Wala,
Hello.
assistant professor from Gurugram University.
अच्छा, रश्मि.
मैम, yes, ma'am. मेरी क्वेश्चनिंग ये है मैम कि जो पेपर पे वर्क होता है वो ग्राउंड पे नहीं होता है. एग्जैक्टली पोजीशन ये है कंडीशन इंडिया की. कहने में और करने में बहुत अंतर है. वो इसलिए कि मैं प्राइवेट सेक्टर में हूँ. मैं आपको बताना चाहूंगी कि वर्क तो हमसे लेने को तैयार है 9 आवर्स का भी, 8 आवर्स का भी, बट दे हैव नॉट पेड फॉर द 4 आवर्स. तो हाउ कैन वी आर ग्रो? हमारी भी फैमिली है, हमारी बच्ची है, हमारी सफरिंग्स है. तो हाउ कैन वी ग्रो? हमारे लिए तो कोई भी एग्जैक्ट पॉइंट नहीं था. जो सैलरीज बढ़ती है गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर में, प्राइवेट के लिए तो कोई भी रूल नहीं बनाते. किसी बनते हैं लेकिन वो कहीं फॉलो नहीं होता. अगर हम थोड़ा भी बोले तो आप जॉब से बाहर हैं. तो व्हाट इज, हम भी वही फेस करके आते हैं जो गवर्नमेंट वाले. हम भी नेट क्वालिफाइड करते हैं, जेआरएफ क्वालिफाई करते हैं, पीएचडी करते हैं, सारा वही हार्ड वर्क करते हैं. फिर हम
इसी के साथ एक क्वेश्चन मैं भी जोड़ना चाहूंगी कि फिजिकल लेबर और मेंटल लेबर जो होता है दोनों की इक्वलेंट है. मतलब 10 घंटे आप फिजिकल लेबर कर सकते हैं और 10 घंटे मेंटल लेबर भी करके भी आप वो प्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं जो आप चाहते हैं. मैं ये भी जानना चाहूंगी.
I can read your concerns. Aparna Joshi has also raised her hand. Can
Yes,
I hear
ma'am.
your questions also?
Yes,
Those
ma'am.
are the 3 that I'll take together.
Myself, Dr. Aparna Joshi, I am head of the Department of Sociology in Gokuldas Hindu Girls College. Ma'am, my question is that the state is continuously rolling back from its welfare responsibility, and the education is the sector that comes within that. So when we say that institutions become self-sufficient, then the institutions in the whole country are of diverse and the industry might collaborate with the institutions which are profitable to them. But the institutions which are in social sciences and in the small institutions which cannot collaborate with them, they will not give money to those institutions.
There are
So
methods
are they
for that. There
are the
methods.
institutions like ours going to perish?
No. That is of
That is
course
my whole question. And the infrastructure which we
That's
need for the
correct.
NEP 2020 is not sufficient in institution like ours. And the
Okay,
working
okay.
hours have gone up many times. And nobody is thinking about the mental stress the teacher and students are going on.
Dr. Aparna,
Yes.
I got your point. Let me hear the last person, Dr. Vishnu. In a program where our friend Dr. Sarita said women empowerment, that is the lone male voice I'm getting to hear. So let me hear him. Yes, Dr. Vishnu, please go ahead.
जी मैम, मैं डॉक्टर वीके शुक्ला, सीजीएन कॉलेज गोला लखीमपुर, एफिलेटेड टू एमएसटी ऑफ लखनऊ. मैम मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि जो एनईपी है, चूंकि आप एनईपी से जुड़ी है, थोड़ा सा छोटा सा क्वेश्चन ये है कि इसका जो एग्जामिनेशन सिस्टम है वो हमारे क्लाइमेट को थोड़ा सूट नहीं करता है. इधर एक सेमेस्टर का जो एग्जाम होता है दिसंबर में, जनवरी में बहुत अधिक ठंडक होती है, उधर मई और जून में होता है बहुत अधिक गर्मी होती है. ज़्यादातर हमारा जो स्टूडेंट आते हैं वो ग्रामीण परिवेश से आते हैं, जो कि इंडिया जो है मोस्ट जो पीपल हैं वो गांव में रहते हैं. तो बच्चे बहुत परेशान होते हैं और थोड़ा बहुत अभी जैसे सेशन कुछ कम ज़्यादा होगा, लेकिन रहेगा तो दिसंबर में ही रहेगा, तो मई जून में ही. तो ये इस पे जो लोग बैठे हैं वहाँ पे वो तो एसी में, या जैसे फॉरेन का अगर ये सिस्टम है तो उनके यहाँ दूसरे प्रकार का क्लाइमेट है, तो इस पे नहीं कुछ ध्यान दिया जा सकता है क्या?
नहीं, ये तो ऑफ कोर्स एनईपी से पहले ही हमारी जो ब्रिटिश सिस्टम थी उस टाइम में हमने जो सिस्टम रखी है उसी हिसाब से चल रही है। अभी केरल में भी यही चर्चा हो रही है, क्योंकि केरल में मानसून जून महीने में शुरू हो जाती है, एंड the severest of monsoon happens in the month of June, July, when the school starts. And so they are wondering whether we should start it in the month of May or so that later on we can give them the vacation during the month of May. This is a simple thing which does not really require a policy. It is merely an administrative arrangement where if feedback of this type goes, that in India, because the states are at diverse levels of weathers, some having very severe winter in December, in some parts, suppose you're talking about December in the whole of southern India, it makes no difference because there is no winter in this part of India at all. So depending on each state's level of, each state's weather situations, I think it is up to universities taking up the matter and trying to see, but we are all so set. We are talking about a uniform calendar. We are saying that यहाँ पे फिर admission का cycle अलग हो जाएगा. इस वजह से हम actually India का diversity इतना ही complex है कि हम एक ही तरीके से अगर हम समझो किसी कारण हम एग्जाम्स मई में नहीं करते हुए हम शायद जून में करें, तो जो भी कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम्स है उसका पूरा एडमिशन साइकिल डिस्टर्ब हो जाती है, क्योंकि ऑल इंडिया लेवल में जो एंट्रेंस एग्जाम्स होती है ये सब के लिए बहुत सारे चेंजेस होती है. बट इट इज अ वैलिड पॉइंट दैट यू हैव सेड, एंड देयर आर सॉल्यूशंस बाय व्हिच वी कैन डू दैट आल्सो, बट आई एम श्योर इट रिक्वायर्स मच मोर न्यूआंस्ड वे, so that a couple of states coming together, if we can think of how we can address that, that may be more workable. But coming to the other persons of the private institutions, where not only private, I would say in public funded institutions also, I think हाल ही में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने क्लियरली एक डिसीजन बताया था कि आप टीचर्स को इस तरह से एडहॉक टीचर्स को जिस तरह से आप 30,000 रुपीज सैलरी देते हैं ये किसी भी तरह एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं है. Whereas we know in reality मेरे ही काउंटरपार्ट्स जो बॉम्बे यूनिवर्सिटी में क्लॉक आवर बेसिस पे काम किया है, कि जैसे कि अपना डॉक्टर अपर्णा ने बताया, एक लेबरर की तरह से इवन अ डेली वेजर लेबर को भी इससे ज्यादा पैसा मिल जाती है. और यही है कि हम एक साइड से बोलते हैं कि गुरु को तो हम एट अ हाईएस्ट पेडेस्टल रखना है और गुरु के ही पूरे सम्मान न देते हुए इनफैक्ट ट्रीटिंग देम ऑलमोस्ट लाइक labor, we treat them. Now in private, what is happening is that all that we have said in the policy is that they should also follow the rules of the game that they are expected to. There must be oversight by the government, and wherever institutions are doing exploitative practices, action must be taken against them. But all this is easily said on paper. The question of shutting down private institutions for, let us say, exploitative practices, there is no such example in India at all. The least we have shut down is where we have seen that there is a blatant violation of certain academic norms and so on. So ये जो एक I would say discrimination जो हो रही है, बहुत सारे प्राइवेट संस्थाएं जो है पेपर पे जो आपको साइन कराते हैं और एक्चुअल में जो देते हैं, it's not that we are not aware about it. We are aware about it. But the fact is that jobs don't come so easily and we fall prey to that. And like she said, if we raise our voices, the threat is that you will lose the job. And therefore, they are forced to comply with that. There is no other thing. If it was happening, it is happening not only in your own state, it is happening across India. People are aware of it. People even write articles about it. But the question is, ultimately, the management has to think that हम जब एजुकेशन के एक संस्था स्टार्ट किया है तो ये प्रॉफिट मेकिंग जैसा कोई इंडस्ट्री नहीं है. जो भी उनकी तरफ से जो रेवेन्यू होती है ये शिक्षकों के लिए और छात्रों के लिए जो बेनिफिट्स होने हैं इसी में उनको इन्वेस्ट करना है और वो रेवेन्यू उनका खुद के बेनिफिट्स के लिए नहीं होती है. So that I think is a question of greater internal accountability that needs to come, but it is very difficult to really implement it and I can only say that, collective action and the long run matters. And the point that Aparna was trying to add to that it is not anything to do with under the care of NEP, whether they are extending your hours or not. The question is about how do they try and tell us that we optimize our teaching time, whether we are, suppose our workload is indicated. I mean, I don't know your current workload, let me be frank about it, but at the time that I started my teaching career, we were talking about 20 lectures per week. I think it has gone much below that, and I'm talking about when we were being called as lecturers and so on. I don't know what it is for an assistant professor now, but 20 hours of a lecture which is of about 45 minutes as being the normal workload included our participation also in helping students for exhibitions like art exhibitions and science exhibitions and so on. And now this question that because of NEP the workload has gone up is because there is very poor planning and not the right understanding in which NEP has to be understood. Your other concern that industry will not come forward to help other than in engineering and so on, and not in social sciences and not in languages. The world has become multidisciplinary. A computer is not manufactured by an engineer. A computer is manufactured with an economist, with a social scientist, with a language person, and therefore, even industry, if we talk to the right people, it is like the airline sector. When they operated, today you have airlines operating in the most remotest parts of India. What did we do? We talked about cross subsidization, that if you wanted to operate in major sectors, you must operate in the other sectors also. So it is very easy, and the entire company laws and the entire corporate laws today allow for corporate businesses to support libraries and laboratories and all disciplines, not just engineering and science and management and pharmacy and so on. The question is, we from our side don't go to these people to ask also, because we think it is below our dignity to go with a begging bowl. It is not a begging bowl. Our students are going and working with them tomorrow, and therefore it is our right to ask that they should be also able to contribute. I really wish I had more time to elaborate, because this is exactly what we have done when we prepared the working group reports for public-private partnership of corporate financing, in which all these committees we were there. These are all deliberated in great depth with people from FICCI and ASSOCHAM and Chambers of Commerce and Industry and all the industry people, where they are saying we are here to help. Even if you read the latest FICCI report or you read the ENY report on higher education and hear what the corporate sector said, you will be amazed that from their side, they are saying we are willing to help provided institutions come to us. So make an effort. Let us try it. It doesn't happen moment we ask for it, but we have to write a project proposal that this is what my college is doing. This is our gray areas in which we are having funding shortages, or these are the areas where we have infrastructure deficit. Can the corporate sector come in and help us? As I said, the lack of time does not allow me to really give you a lot of concrete examples, but there is on one side an inertia on the part of institutions, not even to explore and say that we need to really work it out so that we can get funding. जैसे आप एक कोलैबोरेटिव रिसर्च के लिए आप प्रपोजल बनाते हैं, तो आप बहुत एफर्ट डालते हुए उसके प्रपोजल के लिए ताकि आपको वो प्रोजेक्ट मिले. इसी तरह से जब आप आईडीपी बनाओगे तो आप एक साइड से जो फंडिंग का इश्यू है, जो एक बहुत ही बड़ा चैलेंज होती है, और जहां पे आपको संस्थाओं की तरफ से एक प्रपोजल लेके जाना है, वो प्रिंसिपल या वाइस चांसलर नहीं लिखेंगे. अपने आप फैकल्टी साथ में आते हुए भी इसके लिए वर्क करके I am sure we will be able to do that. I know that because my own alma mater has got substantial funding both from its past students and also from industry, because that is where I said parents become important. Parents are people who are working in those industries, और वो भी एक major stakeholder है इसमें. कि उनका छात्र जो पढ़ रहे हैं उनका खुद का बच्चा नहीं होगा, बट वो किसी और के लिए भी होते हुए उसका एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि वो आने वाले पीढ़ियों के लिए भी वो कंट्रीब्यूट करे। और इसीलिए पेरेंट्स का इन्वॉल्वमेंट हायर एजुकेशन से आपके जो अभी अभी आपने जो दिक्कतें बताए हैं उसको सरमाउंट करने के लिए उनके भी एक स्ट्रेंथ आप यूटिलाइज करें।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैम आपका, आपने इतना सारगर्भित व्याख्यान दिया। सभी हमारे साथी लगातार देखिए जुड़े रहे, एक भी सेकंड को कोई हटा नहीं है, मैं तो हटती नहीं हूँ मैम सबको। जैसे कि अभी आप कहनी थी मैम कि हमें 66 पेज का सार जरूर पढ़ना चाहिए, मुझे लगता है कि आपने इतने कम समय में वो सारा सार हमें बता दिया मैम। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैम आपके व्याख्यान के लिए।
Dr. Suniti, I want to ask a question.
मैम मीनाक्षी मैम कुछ पूछना चाह रही हैं आपसे।
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Dr. Meenakshi Sharma. I'm in Gokuldas Das Degree College. I want to ask, ma'am, can NEP make India a global hub global hub for research and innovation or not?
See, it's not a yes or no answer at all, Dr. Meenakshi. It is about enabling system having been put in place. When we created the National Research Foundation, that is the Rashtriya Anusandhan Ayog that we created, it is basically to give an impetus to research. I think you're aware that if you take a comparative figure, India's total GDP spend on research is less than 0.8%. And we are targeting to reach at least something like 2 to 3% in the research funding. That can come about only through a lot of collaborative research. No longer today research which is individual or single institution really brings about a lot of changes. Therefore, it is very important that we create mechanisms for more collaborative research. Now, going for innovation beyond research involves higher education institutions, as I said, recognizing that they are engines of growth and not just degree churning institutions, where they need to start having innovation clubs, conduct hackathons, conduct, let us say, major events where students are encouraged from creating from a proof of concept to actually translating that to become either a product or resulting in a patent. India's contribution at the level that it is right now is very, very nascent. And it is important that first the policy has recognized that inadequacy, has created certain enablers for that. And if many of our institutions collaborate, come together, move in the direction, I think even if we may not become so far a global superpower, but in some areas, for example, vaccine development, you know that during the COVID, India came forward. Is our pharmaceutical education aligned to that? We need to see that. I think it is not, because I talk to pharmacy teachers and I'm not very happy to hear that. So there are areas that we need to identify, focus, and then think, because we cannot have research spread thin across all. What is the core strengths that we have in which areas, whether it is in renewable energy, whether it is in pharmaceuticals, these areas have to be understood, and accordingly we need to leverage that. I think it is not that I could give you a very simple yes or no answer, but I would only say that NEP has recognized some of our inadequacies and has tried to provide, let us say, the right kind of an ecosystem where we can nurture it.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving very valuable answer. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Ma'am, to add to what Professor Meenakshi Sharma just asked you, this is Professor Anuradha Singh, Department of English, Gokuldas Hindu Girls College. Ma'am, there is so much emphasis on good research in NEP. I would just like to know what we see nowadays is quantity superseding quality. So many researchers, one guide supervising research on things that are not in his forte. Is there a way for quality control, ma'am, in research in under NEP?
So what the UGC guidelines, I am not someone who really supports many of the UGC guidelines. Let me be very frank about it. But at least on the research part, in terms of limiting the number of doctoral students under a given faculty, the need that faculty need to think of collaborating to encourage multidisciplinary research happening. Say, for example, I am a case where I have done my PhD in distance education, but I did not have a degree in education. And I had that reason to do it in distance education because of the fact that I was then associated with IGNOU. But my core discipline was political science. So initially I had to have two guides, one in political science and one in education. And so that kind of methods that we need to devise, and I got it with a lot of effort and fight and so on. Let me be very frank about that also. But today the NEP tells you that you can have that kind of research abilities to have multidisciplinary research. And we are also breaking this thought that it is not necessary that it is your major in which you may want to do a research in or your master's in. It may be in the minor or your elective in which you can do, because you need to give some credence and self-esteem to an adult learner who may be having self-capabilities of being able to do research. The question is of giving that opportunity and that choice. Later, if they want to retract from that, that is a risk that they are taking. And allowing students to take that risk is also something that goes to a higher level in the higher order that we are thinking. So NEP has done many things, which is a break from the past, a complete break from the past. And in that sense, it is not very easily digestible to many of us because there is an unconscious bias from the baggage that we carry for ourselves, and that attitudinal blocks need to vanish in terms of understanding that unless we change, our students are going to have a suicidal existence, because if they don't become multidisciplinary, they are not likely to get jobs. They are not likely to remain productive for about 40-45 years of their life going forward. Please understand, a graduate coming out in 2028 has to be productive not just till 2030. Like you all know, we have to be productive for another 40-45 years. It's a world of lifelong learning, and that you're looking at 2067 or 2070. I don't have in my wildest of dreams any idea what this world would look like in 2067 or 2070. So given that scenario, let us understand that multidisciplinarity, collaborative learning, flexibility, multiple trajectories and pathways, these are all things we must embrace because that is imperative in the world going forward.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
थैंक यू मैम, आपका इतना सार्वगर्भित व्याख्यान के लिए। आपने हमें ये दृष्टि दी कि उच्च शिक्षा का भविष्य सुशासन और प्रबंधन के ढांचे पर ही आधारित है। आपकी उद्बोधन ने ये स्पष्ट किया कि नई शिक्षा नीति 2020 में शासन और प्रबंधन केवल नीतिगत शब्द ही नहीं बल्कि शिक्षा के व्यवहारिक भविष्य की आधारशिला है। शिक्षा केवल ज्ञान का आदान प्रदान ही नहीं बल्कि नीति और अभ्यास के सही समन्वय से ही समृद्ध और शक्तिशाली बनती है। आपके विचार हमारे लिए मार्गदर्शक और प्रेरणादायी है मैम। आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। मैं पूरे शॉर्ट टर्म कोर्स की ओर से आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देती हूँ मैम, कि जो हमारा ये सौभाग्य है कि हमें आज आपको सुनने का मौका मिला। दो पंक्तियां कहना चाहती हूँ मैम, जैसे कि मेरी आदत समझ लीजिए कुछ भी। नीति की नींव आपने रखी, नीति की नींव आपने मजबूत बनाई, शिक्षा की धारा को नई दिशा दिखाई, ड्राफ्टिंग कमेटी में आपका योगदान महान, हर विचार में था विकास का अरमान, हृदय से करते हैं हम कृतज्ञता प्रणाम, स्वीकार करें धन्यवाद सादर सम्मान। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर।
थैंक यू सो मच। थैंक यू सो मच। गॉड ब्लेस यू ऑल। टेक केयर।
Thank you, ma'am.
Wish
Thank
you all a
you.
very happy Ganesh Chaturthi and the festive season.
Thank you so much,
Same to you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
साथियों, जैसे कि